and told me if you're meeting with them tomorrow. And so I guess he called me, but I didn't get the message. I didn't see that he had called until like 3. I called him back, no answer. So I was just like, well,
we'll get you in there.
I'm staying at home.
We'll get you next week. Well, we're going to head you there today anyway, so we'll do it next week.
Okay.
Changed the rules for a forum here recently. What's that? I saw a shadow. The shadow that is Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Mesa shadow to me. Shadow of Mesa.
So pretty nice new public safety facility. Glad y'all could come out here. So as you know, we'll be conducting meetings here until the next pandemic or the new city hall, whichever comes first. Back in front of everybody, especially for our public hearings, so that we can have the public here and have them be able to come up and speak. So with that, the first order of business this evening is our meeting concerning the public hearings. So I will read the rules of order for public hearing zoning matters, which is our city code section 280-2. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request that the parcels of property which are the subject of the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced, but may be extended by majority vote, provided they are expanded equally for proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the microphone and give their name and address to the city clerk. Do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. So, I have 2 gavels here. I'm not sure which one to use. We'll pick that one. It's the bigger one. All right, so the first item on the public hearing zoning matters we have is PZ 2021-729, which is 3543 and 3553 Chamblee Dunwoody Road, the Gordon DCI.
So this application is for development of community impact and 18 accompanying variances and 1 waiver. The project is on Chamblee Dunwoody Road, just beyond the American Industrial Way intersection, and is for 120 residential condo units with first floor retail uses. This project was previously before you a couple of years ago, and that approval for DCI has since expired. So that, just to give you a brief outline of what that request was, and previous approval was for 2 separate buildings connected by a walkway for 56 condo units, about 7,000 square feet of retail space with parking on the ground floor behind that liner building. The current request before you is to again demolish the existing building and parking lot and construct 120 condo units with just slightly more at about 8,000 square feet of retail space with a parking deck that is in the rear of some of the units on one side of building, a rooftop amenity and pool on the top floor, and the same amenities that were proposed originally with the rail trail on the northern property line. So the applicant, as I mentioned, is requesting 18 variances, a good number of them designed. A couple of note, increasing the maximum building height from 7 to 8 stories. They are proposing to stay within the maximum, that's the number of stories. They are proposing to stay within the maximum building height at about 98 feet. The maximum building height is 110. A couple other design variances to the parking garage wrapping and fenestration on the ground floor to decrease the amount of fenestration. Of note with this one is with the mercantile style building that they're proposing here, there's not as much glass in that architectural style as a more contemporary storefront system, so they are requesting to reduce that fenestration requirement, as well as increase the number of balcony units, the percentage of balcony units on the front from 33 to 36. Here is an aerial of the existing site there on Chamblee Road and the existing site survey. This was the prior approved plan. You can see the surface parking lot and 2 buildings. And it was 4 stories at that time, 56 units. Still the mercantile style. This is the proposed site plan. It is much more built out with the 120 units. And the proposed open space wrapping that building. And the landscape plan. One variance of note that you can identify in this is there is an existing utility line over on the western side of the site at the front of the street, and they are requesting to not put street trees in a portion of that because of that existing utility line. This is a proposed ground floor plan and a proposed roof plan, and then images of each of the site plans or floor plans of each of the different floors. And the elevation. This is the kind of northwestern elevation against KLA. And then the southeastern elevation. You can see the parking deck there in the rear of the building. And this is the elevation fronting on Chamblee Road. So I mentioned the request for the parking deck screening. The applicant at the time of application had not landed on a complete design for the parking lots or the parking deck screening. So it could be that they don't end up needing that variance, but they did request it, not knowing entirely what they were proposing. And existing site photos with the existing building there. So staff recommends approval of the GCI with a total of 4 conditions. The first being condition to the plan book, and then the remaining 3 from the design review board. The first being to screen the parking deck with similar materials as the primary building. The second being, the third being to require a small vehicle delivery space, and that stems from the applicant's request to not provide any loading spaces. And then the last one, for the street trees, that variance that they requested to not put in all the street trees, that they work to the maximum extent possible to be able to put those in for that utility crossing. And we are recommending approval of 7 variances and denial of 11 variances and 1 waiver. And just of note, the required notices have been sent out and signs posted on the property, and a legal ad notice for this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we will have the public hearing portion of this. Those wishing to speak in favor, please come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk, and let us know if you're related to the project, and we'll have 10 minutes for this section. Put whatever resembles those red trees.
So, thank you for the opportunity to thank you for the opportunity to present to you again. My name is Rob Mullis with Windsor Stevens Holdings. We're the developer of this project. It's been a long time coming. Pleased to say that we've secured all of the financing for the project and we're ready to go. We're asking for approval of all of the variances in the waivers request, and basically because we are consistent with the design that we put forward back in 2019. And I'd like to kind of run through the staff report and kind of juxtapose that with what the mayor and council decided to do in 2019. Okay, so we're thankful for the recommendation approval of the DCI. The second item, the applicant shall screen the parking garage with materials similar to the buildings. We are interested in creating a space where art will be, and we would like to use that garage screening as a opportunity for local artists. I think we have an art council, so we're in we're in agreement with that. Two, the applicant shall design a parking space parking space in the parking garage for small vehicle deliveries. We will do that. We're in agreement with that. Three, the applicant shall install street trees and pedestrian lights to the maximum as possible due to existing utilities. We agree to that also. On the denials, the variance for Chapter 2, Section 3B1 to increase the percentage of units with a floor area less than 800 square feet from 60 to 85. I should stop here and tell you why we made the changes. We made the changes to this building for two reasons. One was because of COVID. We wanted to make sure that this building was reflective in a design perspective from a post-COVID environment. And two, when we were going to the capital markets for condos, which is very, very difficult, there was an issue around cost. And our capital partners wanted us to be a significant amount of money less than townhomes because we were selling less space. And so we needed to lower our per unit cost. And so to do that, we had to increase the density. And we also had to have smaller units to make it economic for people, so they wouldn't be competing against a townhouse that they could buy for $400,000 or $500,000. So with that, to that point, we in 2019, and the council provided a variance for us for 80% of units. And we're asking for 85 just to lower the cost of the individual units, and so we can be competitive in the marketplace. Number 2 of the denial, item number 3, not to construct a parking garage to enable future conversions to residential and non-residential use. We are going to be a regional parking area for this community. There's a lot of developments coming around. We're going to have extra parking for the units that we have, and we think that there's no way we can get an HOA or any type of management system to agree to not have parking for that building. Next item. Variance for not to screen the external openings of the parking garage with the decorative elements such as the metal grill work, brick screens, or louvers. The mesh screen should be provide an opportunity for the art, as we said, and we would like to kind of work collaboratively with the Art Council to make that happen. To exceed the maximum building height from 7 stories to 8 stories. The project requires that maximum height to be used so we can get the density, and we stay within the cap and the spirit, and we want to be competitive from a pricing standpoint to the marketplace. And so we respectfully request that we get that extra height. And if you will look over here at what we have, we are using the height on the rail trail, and we had a brick wall in our previous design, and so it was covered there. It's much more attractive to have the units up there on the area. Variance to reduce the percentage of fenestration on the ground floor in mixed use building type 70 to 48. If you can look at our building, we have these big arches and concourse, and the concourse where you can have dining there, it will be a very nice opportunity for open air during the winter and summer times and spring times. I think we really would lose something if that was denied. Variance for architectural patterns, buildings to allow upper level fenestration with window size to increase the base zone to the cornice. This was approved in 2019 submittal, and the DRB also recommended approval. I think it adds something to the building to have that look. Variance not to provide 40% shade cover on the roof or level of the parking garage. If you look at the roof over here, we have all of our amenities on the roof. And so we have a pool, a trellis, and grill, and recreation area, and a green space. And so we were hoping that we could use that space and not have to put another covering over there. And the DRB also agreed with us, and they recommended that we get that approved also. Let's see, increase the amount of fenestrations on the upper floors of a mixed-use building from 40 to 44. The building style fenestration is the same as previously submitted and approved in 2019, and the DRB recommended approval also. Number 14, variance not to provide to interparcel access. This variance was approved in 2019 submittal. DRB also recommended approval. 18, variance to allow accessory mechanical systems to be located between the building and the street. The mechanical systems above ground, reduced pressure zone required by the county, and so the DRB is recommended approval also. And finally, a waiver for the tree density on the landscape to provide 33.5 inches in diameter at the breast height and submit recompense to the remaining density. We are in a very, very tight site, and we were willing to pay a recompense to the city to park it, to plant trees in a more appropriate area. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. There's still just a little over 2 minutes left if anyone else wishes to come up and speak in favor of the project. No? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Very good. So this item will move then to our work session agenda. So, we've kind of all gotten in this kind of crazy way of going about our business because of COVID, but we're going back to our standard operating procedure, and that we will get through every item on the public hearing. And then as we call to order the work session, these items that are under the public hearing will come up underneath the development department. So it will come back again for discussion from the city council if they have questions of the applicant or the staff on any particular project. So having said that, the next item on the zoning matters for the public hearing is PZ 2021-746, which is 5238 Peachtree Road, the Pruitt Health DCI.
Thank you, Mayor. Is for a development of community impact and 2 accessory variances, 9 requests, and then 3 waiver request. The location is 5238 Peachtree Road. It is located in the transit-oriented development zoning district, located directly across the street from MARTA. The applicant is proposing a mixed-use office building, and you will also recognize this as a recent DCI. However, this one is not yet expired. The current approved request is for about 200,000 square feet of 5-story office space with also a fitness center and a cafe. The applicant in that was proposing to remove the curb cut on Malone Drive and place it on Peachtree Road to accommodate the circulation on the site, and also construct a parking deck and all the streetscape. The current request is to break a similar land use up into a 10-year phasing plan. So phase 1 would be composed of about 125,000 square feet of office, the cafe and fitness center, and then a surface parking lot. And then phase 2 would be construction of a parking deck, an additional 150,000 square feet of office. And so this results in about a 75,000 square feet increase in the office area. And then the similar site improvement. So there are also a number of variance requests, a total of 9 variances and 3 waivers. Some of them for parking deck, design standards, and supplemental zone. So like I mentioned, this property is located across from MARTA, adjacent to the Peachtree Malone Loft there to the west, multi-tenant commercial building to the east, and then the DeKalb Senior Center to the north there. Here's the existing site plan. You will notice Peachtree Road on plan south there, and then Malone Drive on plan west. So this is the previously approved site plan for the 200,000 square feet. First floor plan and those renderings and elevations. One thing to note as you're comparing to the current request before you, you'll take notice of the brick color. That is one significant change, and then also the perforated metal panels is changing. So this is the proposed phase 1 site plan, where that 125,000 square feet is pulled up to the corner there at the intersection of Peachtree Road and Malone Drive, and then the surface parking lot around it. And then phase 2, where the parking deck is over there on the east side, and with an additional amount of office space on top of that parking deck to be able to further conceal that. So phase 2 adds that over on the east side, as well as on the north side there, that appendage in that existing parking lot. And so this is phase 1 open space calculation, and phase 2. And then the landscape plan. So we've got some renderings that clearly differentiate phase 1 and 2. So this is phase 1. Looking east on Peachtree Road. And that streetscape. So down at the bottom is where you've got phase 1 elevation along Peachtree Road, and then the top is the elevation that's facing the senior center. And then the 2 side, east and west. So here you've got the updated materials palette with a much lighter color brick and some metal panels there. And there you can see on phase 2 the office space that's above the parking deck there. And here you can see phase 2 that's been added to Malone Drive, as well as on the Peachtree Road frontage. And then the elevations. The rear one, or the bottom one, is the Peachtree Road frontage, the separation of phases 1 and 2. And then the top is the north elevation, so that's facing the DeKalb Senior Center, with phase 1 being offset in the back a little bit. And then the 2 side elevations. The one in the rear, the parking garage, is adjacent to that commercial building that fronts that, or that lines that property line. These are the existing site conditions. And based on the criteria outlined in section 280, staff recommends approval of the DCI with 4 conditions. The first being condition 2, substantial conformance with the plan book. And then the rest being similar carryovers from the current approval. First, that the cafe and fitness area are separate spaces open to the public. That the parking deck is publicly accessible. And then the last one, recommendation by the DRB, that the primary building materials are carried over into the parking deck. The staff recommends approval of 8 variances and 2 waivers, and then denial of 1 variance and 1 waiver.
Great, thank you very much. All right, anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come up to the microphone, give us your name, address, and if you let us know if you're how and if you are related to the project. Thank you, Lauren.
Good evening, Mayor Clarkson, members of council. My name is Jessica Hill. My address is 3343 Peachtree Road, and I represent the property owner and applicant. A couple things have happened since we were here in 2019. First, Pruitt Health has purchased the property that is before you tonight, so that's a good start in the right direction of moving to Chamblee. The second thing that has happened, obviously, is we've had a pandemic that has caused everybody to revisit how they're going to develop office space, which is why we have a 2-phase or a multi-phased DCI before you. We have a DCI request, a request to extend the DCI period. As you know, it expires after 5 years. We're asking that we have a 10-year period for that because of the multi-phased approach. And then we have the variances and waivers that were mentioned. We only have 2 new variances and 1 new waiver. The other variances and waivers that we are requesting were approved in some form. Now, they have been edited with a new design, which we will explain in a little bit. But the majority of the waivers and variances have previously been reviewed and approved. We are amenable to the staff's conditions. We obviously would like you to approve all of the variances and waivers, but the conditions as listed are acceptable to the applicant. And with that, 2 things. One, we have representatives from the development team here. We have the CFO from Pruitt Health, Randall Loggins, is present in the audience. And Chris Scott with Greenstone is going to be the development manager for this, is going to explain the actual project to you. So with that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Scott, 3301 Windy Ridge Parkway, Atlanta 30339. Thanks again for seeing us again tonight. Glad to be back in front of all you guys. We're excited. We feel like COVID is still here, but we're starting to see the light, and that's why we're here. I wanted to just kind of step back. You've seen it. I know you guys were all present, and either on council or present when we were going through this first DCI in November of 19. But if you could put next slide. As we noted, this was a 200,000 square foot, 5-story office building with 550 parking spaces and a parking deck. And we had a lot of extra space built into this from an expansion perspective. And when we did hit the pause button for COVID, it gave us time to go back and really right-size the building and think about how they're going to use it in the future. Next slide. What slide, please? This is the previous DCI building, just showing the Malone and Peachtree corner. Next slide, please. And you can see the parking deck. We actually have an art feature built into that deck with the Pruitt logo. It was approved in the last DCI. Next slide, please. So the new building, as we mentioned, is a 5-story, 125,000 square foot office building with 98 spaces. I think it's important to note there's actually 93 spaces on the site today, so it's almost the same. It's a reduction of 452 spaces, or 82% from the previous DCI. Next slide, please. This is a picture just showing at the side of the building. One thing I want to notice, you guys have noticed looking through the whole building when we're looking at the renderings, different balconies and terraces. There's a total of 5, which really breaks up the massing of the building. That's one comment we had before. It looked like somebody had called it an iceberg. It wasn't very nice, but it didn't have a lot of. It was a big mass, and it didn't have a lot of breakup of these spaces. But these balconies and terraces, I think, are just great and really enhance the look of the building. Next slide, please. So the one variance that was denied was our sign variance. That's one that is really, sorry, thank you, is important to us. One of the signs is for the cafe that's open to the public. 2 of them kind of show the entrance in the building along Peachtree that you can see just behind the red car. And and then one at the top of the building, and then the Pruitt part, which for code is considered a sign, but we really consider it art. So that's one we'd really ask you to consider approval for. Next slide, please. We did this one just to show you an example. This is not, we have not engaged a landscape architect to look at the actual green and streetscape. But this is a great slide to show what you guys really pushed us to do in the previous DCIs, pushing the building back off the Peachtree, having this nice area for residents and the community to use and enjoy. It also showed just the step down of 3 feet, small retaining wall and the steps. I think just does a great job of showing what it will actually look like. Also think it did a great job showing the brick color. Next slide, please. Next slide. So now we're moving to the phase 2. This phase 2 gives us the ability to build 150,000 feet of additional office space. It actually is a 2-level deck this time with 3 levels of office on top of the parking. The total parking will go from 98 spaces from phase 1 to a total of 171 total. Still 379 spaces less than our first approval. Another thing, the setbacks along Peachtree and Malone, we didn't alter. Really, the architectural we didn't alter. We really wanted to come back with something that was consistent with what you approved before, for the most part. Next slide, please. Again, this is phase 2. This is actually almost the exact footprint of which was approved before, just in this new phasing and less parking. Next slide, please. So we got some feedback from DRB and also some council that the screening and the shading of the covering of the 2 levels of parking deck was too dark and obtrusive. Next slide. Again, looking from down Peachtree, you can see it from the far corner. So we spent some time, we went back to the drawing board with our architects and with Pruitt and tried to find a design that really fit with the building that I think you guys will like a lot better. Next slide, please. So this really is consistent now. You almost don't even know it's a parking deck from Peachtree in that first side. So you're seeing the same materials of glass and brick and metal panels that you see all along Peachtree in the left. Next slide, please. Again, this is a great slide. You can see it, the parking structure with the new rendering, but also you can see the balconies kind of above and below the art, the logo, along Peachtree, at the top of the building, another terrace. There's another terrace on the back of the building as well. So just lots of neat areas, post-COVID, pre-built to enjoy being outside at the end of the day. That really concludes that the one waiver that was rejected was burying the power lines. We're okay with that. We understand that. I think it'll be a better look for our building anyway. We were hoping not to pay for it, but we're good. So that concludes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So we got just probably right about 3 minutes if anyone else wishes to speak in favor of this development. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Very good. As I mentioned, this will move forward to the work session for the council to have discussion if they desire. The next item, number 3 under public hearings, is PZ 2021-748, which is 5805 and 5855 Peachtree Boulevard, JE Lighthouse, DCI.
Thank you. Request is for a development of community impact and associated 15 variances and 5 waivers for 5805 and 5855 Peachtree Boulevard. The property is zoned corridor commercial, and the proposed use is for an automotive and office dealership building and accessory parking garage. So the request is to demolish the existing building there, and there's the subject site is a Mazda and Saab building, to construct a 110,000 square feet automotive showroom and office building, and then elevated parking structure in the rear. To be able to address the city's UDO sustainability certification, the applicant is proposing to certify the building LEED, and then also has some accessory requests on top of that. So the parking deck entails 510 parking spaces, and then there are also 42 surface parking spaces. The applicant is proposing, there are currently 4 curb cuts on the full extent of the property, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. and the applicant is proposing to close one of those. And then the lot will be split into 3 separate lots, and so the majority of the construction is going to occur, and the majority of the proposed use is on lot 2, but there are also some proposed improvements on lots 1 and 3, with some updates to landscaping on those. And then there are proposed street frontage requirements. So, like I mentioned, the applicant is requesting some 15 variances, some of them related to automobile-related uses, adjustments to the supplemental zone to reconfigure it to match the adjacent property, the Audi, that's lot 3, that redeveloped just recently, and then have some space in between the building and the street to accommodate some access. And then a series of 5 waivers related to driveway spacing and drive aisle in particular. So this is the subject property. On the south side there is the Audi dealership. The next building is the Maserati. And then the next 2 buildings there that one right in front of each other are the Mazda and the Saab buildings that are proposed to be demolished. That is lot 2. And then an existing Volkswagen building right there. So just to orient you, Peachtree Boulevard is now on Plan South. And so we are looking at the proposed subdivision into lot 2 in the center, and then lot 1 there on Plan West, and then lot 3 on Plan East. So some of the variances that the applicant has requested are a function of this lot subdivision. Because the act of subdividing the land has made these properties a little bit more non-conforming for things like impervious surface area, open space. So there are some of the requests for those properties as well. But the rest of the remaining variances are for this lot 2 to accommodate this 4-story office and showroom. And here's the proposed landscape plan. And elevation. So on the bottom of the sheet there is the Peachtree Boulevard elevation. The portion that you can see of the parking deck is offset pretty far back to the back of the building. That is not up front with on the Peachtree Boulevard frontage. And then the rear of the building is the elevation of that. And then the 2 sides. The one on the top is adjacent to the Volkswagen dealership, and then the one on the bottom is adjacent to the Maserati and Audi lot 3. And here's a rendering of all of those both existing buildings and the proposed building there in the center, and how those will configure together, as well as the proposed streetscape. And it does look like streetscape is proposed on lot 1. And then these are renderings both along Peachtree Boulevard and looking toward Peachtree Boulevard. And existing photos. This is the existing streetscape. This photo in the middle, the applicant is looking to mirror, which is a reverse of some of those streetscape elements. So staff recommends, based on the criteria in section 280 and 300, approval of the DCI with 2 conditions. The first being approval of the in substantial compliance with the plan book and associated materials, and then the second one from the DRB that the front portion of the building does meet the minimum height or the maximum height requirement of 60 feet. They requested in variance 3 that be increased to 62. And so that variance has been broken into both an A and B. So you can see in our requested or our recommended approved variances, 3A is to approve the rear of the building for the stair tower on the parking deck. And then we recommended denial of 3B, which is that office building component that was requested to be 60 and 62. So again, we recommend approval of 5 variances and 1 waiver, and then denial of 10 variances and 4 waivers. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so we'll move forward with those wishing to speak in favor of this proposed development.
DCI, please make your way to the microphone. You all back there. Mr. Ellis, you're up. Ellis, Doctor.
Good evening. Love the new space.
Yeah, how about that?
Good. I'm Steve Ellis with Pro Building Systems. No relation to Jim Ellis, just thanks for working with us. My address is 3678 North Peachtree Road, Chamblee, Georgia. Very good. Appreciate your time this evening to hear about what we consider a very exciting project in the Motor Mile corridor. It's the first of its type in the sense that we do have a dealership on the first 2 floors, but for the first time we're going above the dealership, above and beyond, and creating 2 additional levels. Above that for some mixed use, some office space, a special event space on the 3rd floor that is going to be used by Jim Ellis Automotive Group, as well as kind of a display for their private car collection. So we use the word car museum, but it's a private car museum for folks that may want to come see the cars. Could we go to the next slide? So here's the existing conditions. As with most of these projects in the Motor Mile, they're about 100% impervious with no trees. This one is 99.7 with 0 trees. So we're hopefully going to make that better in this effort. You'll notice there's 2 drive entrances on lot 2. It's paved to the property line. There's no landscape strip in the front. It's essentially paved from property line to property line. Go to the next slide, please. Here is our proposed site plan. First thing to mention, Rebecca mentioned the streetscape. We did Audi a few years ago. We did extend the entrance here. One of our variance requests is to allow us to have the lights and the trees on the opposite side of the sidewalk, just for continuity. That's the way that it was approved then, and we were extending the streetscape to the end of lot 1. But we thought it would, look a little funny if you have lights and trees on one side of the sidewalk for half of it, and lights and trees on the opposite side on the other. You can see we are creating a significant amount of green space, but we are increasing the green space by several percentage points. We are going to have the ability to landscape the site with some trees and some landscaping that'll greatly improve it. The drive between the building and the street, that is necessary for us here. As you can see, we have 5 businesses, and then when you have Hyundai down to the south, actually 6 businesses that customers and employees alike traverse between on a daily basis. And without that drive in front of the building and the street, it would greatly hinder the flow, and we also believe would probably increase some traffic difficulties with forcing patrons to get out onto Peachtree Industrial Boulevard to move north onto the northern properties. What we are proposing there is that will be a pavers, so to give it more of a plaza feel. It'll also kind of give a visual reference for the folks driving when they change, the surface change. It kind of cues folks to slow down, drive as fast, and know what's happening there. We are adding some landscape strips and some other stuff in the front and get rid of that entrance there. Go to the next slide, please. Okay. That's just a traffic fire truck plan. Next slide, please. So here's our grading plan. So as with most of these old properties, there's no stormwater. So we are proposing full underground detention that will be compliant with water quality, all the stormwater aspects of the Blue Book and the current standards with the city engineering department. Here's our landscape plan. So you can see the street trees and the streetscape. The landscape strips in the front of the property there that do not currently exist, and I think the renderings show that really well. We're also putting a kind of an island in what we're calling Grand Central Station behind the service reception there, where all the ins and outs of the parking structure and the service component. We're kind of creating a roundabout there that's going to be nicely landscaped. We're landscaping around the building. We're also proposing vertical green screens around the parking deck on all 3 sides, essentially. The front side is the office building, but that way there will be some vertical plantings there to kind of compensate for where we're deficient on landscaping on the ground. Next slide, please.
That's it. This building doesn't work. We gotta run it back. Oh, there we go. Guys, that's it. Sorry. We're not gonna be able to use this building.
So this is the site plan, floor plan, kind of showing you the entire ground level of this facility will be for service and for the dealership. So the front quadrant is the dealership and service reception. Then kind of the rear rectangle and the kink is all service component for Volkswagen, as well as for Audi as well in the rear. So the entire ground level is going to be occupied. Next slide, please.
We are at slide 133 of 160, so it's slow.
Got it.
That's just a bullet 4 plan of the same thing. Next slide, please. So the second level is the dealership as well as the parking structure. Jump one.
Just got to talk fast.
Exactly. Third level is the special event space. Fourth level is the corporate offices. And one thing we want to mention is all of the levels of the parking deck connect to the levels of each floor, so that folks that are potentially working on level 2 could park in covered parking and go to level 2. Level 3 could be accessed for special event. Level 4 would be for the corporate employees could park in covered parking, because we do have a 5th level of parking above that. To the next slide, please. So that's the top level parking deck. One of the variances we're asking for, which we've been approved previously on these storage parking decks, is not just to have the 40% covered area on the top, but we do have a really cool amenity there. That's a sky delivery space that's going to have some green space there. That's kind of a requirement of the Volkswagen Lighthouse program, but also we think it will be a great amenity for employees when it's not being used for a top level kind of covered area to have lunch or to hang out. You can even have events in the evening up there. Next slide, please. Elevations, and as Rebecca said, one is facing Maserati, one facing the Volkswagen dealership. Front elevations and rear elevation. You can see the vertical green screens there. Continue. Okay, next slide. That's a section showing that each of the parking deck levels are connected to each of the floor levels. And one thing I'd like to mention with that slide, one of the variances that is being denied by staff, and the one element that the Architectural Review Board recommended denial on, was the 2-foot height increase in the front. While it seems like not a lot of elevation change, we did the math. Our first level has to be 18 feet floor to floor, 18 feet floor to floor, because we're lifting cars on the first level. And just doing the math there for 4 stories to get good ceiling heights on the corporate level, we wanted to be able to get 10-foot ceiling heights up there. 62 is where we really need to be. Next slide, please. So here's a 3D view, aerial view from the south looking north. You can see the green screens around the parking deck, and you can see there in the corner of the dealership we have kind of an outdoor delivery space there on the ground level. And the back of that wall is also a green, kind of a vertical green garden there, which we think is a really cool element to kind of play off of the parking decks. Next slide, please. View from the other side, you can see we do have the green screens there on the ramp as well. Some kind of generic massing drawings there. So there's a rendering from the front. So this really highlights the front door that we were talking about. While we do have the road between the building and the street, the drive lane, and there are 10 parking spaces that we're asking for there. Those are not display spaces. Those are the only ground level customer parking spaces that are going to be able to be used at this facility. So those are paramount to our flow and our function. But you can see the landscaping and the trees and everything that Brandon's greatly enhancing that front door. There's a view looking north to the south with the street trees and the sidewalks. Looking from south to north, kind of highlighting that front corner delivery space. That's from the interior, what we're calling the roundabout. That second level space that you see there is an outdoor waiting space for customers, and there's a cafe on the second floor. We think that's a really nice amenity for folks there, for employees or for customers, to have a covered outdoor waiting space. And there's kind of a 3D view from aerial view showing everything rendered. And that view is just another view there. So that's all we have on the presentation of the slides. I would like to kind of go through each one of the variances that staff has recommended denial on. Again, the Architectural Review Board and Design Review Board we're in support of all of our requests, with the exception of the 2-foot height increase. So we talked about 3B. Variance 5 through variance 13 have all been approved in the past on automotive projects. There's precedent for all of those variances. I joke sometimes that we ask for the same list of variances, the same 15 for all the automotive projects. The service entrance to facing the street. It's not really service, it's service reception. It's a finished space, tile floor, nice finishes. It's where they're receiving the customer, but no service is happening there. There's precedence for Kia and for Cadillac and other stores there. So all of those variances we've asked for previously, and staff has been and council has supported us in those requests. So that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you very much. You're good on your time. We got about 20 seconds left. Going up to, and I actually
did pause when we had our technical difficulties there. So anyone else wish to speak in favor? You'd have to talk fast. No. Anyone wish to speak in opposition to this
request? Very good. This will move forward and will be discussed if
council chooses that during the work session coming up. Item 4 and the last item on the public hearing of zoning matters is TA 2021-02, which is a UDO amendment, signs, stormwater, and lighting.
Thank you, Mayor. So these 3 text amendments are a result of text amendments initiated at the March Mayor and Council meeting. So I'll go through each one of them individually, but they are packaged as one. So the first being some amendments to the outdoor lighting ordinance. We were asked to look at some provisions to be able to allow some architectural lighting within the dark skies ordinance. So we worked with both the International Dark Sky Association as well as Southcon, they're a supplier, and work closely with Georgia Power to kind of understand and interpret some of these standards, and have provided some exemptions for architectural lighting, but with some parameters to kind of work through some unintended consequences. So the first being just that exemption, and then that they have a correlated color temperature of no more than 3,000 Kelvin. I will note that that is a white light standard, so if we were running to allow something like a blue light, then we'd have to go with more of a 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin ceiling on that. And then the second being the requirement that no more than half a foot candle value be projected on adjacent properties. That's similar to the standards we've got in other places in the outdoor lighting ordinance. And then you can see in this study of a sample fixture that at 8 feet, that fixture meets the half-foot candle measure. And so that would mean anything either lighting a building or on a building, illuminating it, could be as close as 8 feet to the property line and meet this standard. So that works within what the standard we'd be looking for illuminating a building. And just of note, the foot candle value is a measure of the light on a surface. So that's where that applies. The second being a landmark sign ordinance. What we looked at here was, are there some instances based on a sign design based on its period, aesthetic, or historic references that we want to allow some kind of special provisions for signs. So what we wanted to do was, one, define that kind of sign as a landmark sign, and then put some parameters on it because they have some special permissions. So first we exempted them from the prohibited sign specifically so that they could be on the roof, similar to the Chamblee sign on top of the olive roof. And then we put some other standards based on location and size. So we limited the size in the proposed ordinance to 150 square feet, and then identified a distance separation of half a mile from one sign to the other, so that they do remain special within the city, even if we are allowing some of these. Properties that are allowed to have these, or that are eligible, we have proposed that those are only along storefront streets. So in the image on the slide, you can see in green all of the storefront streets. And we've just done a really quick study of what that half mile might be, allowing 10 to 15 signs within the city, given these parameters, just to give you the context of that. And then, by comparison, the Chamblee sign is just under 200 square feet, and it is about a half mile from the Chamblee-Dunwoody Road intersection, to give you an idea that would be the separation that would be required based on these provisions. And then lastly, we've got, with the increase in development, we have some amended provisions to our stormwater ordinance. The first would be reducing the threshold for runoff reduction and reducing that requirement from 5,000 down to 1,000 square feet for when they have to do runoff reduction. And then, in addition to that, you can see the small red text. We would reduce the channel protection thresholds from 5,000 down to 3,000 square feet. And staff recommends moving these three components of the text amendment to a first read at the April 20th meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Did we skip the residential recycling ordinance?
It is not up for a public hearing. It was a public hearing in March, so it'll just be discussion.
Very good. So we will then go back to number 4, and I will ask anyone wishing to speak in favor of these UDO amendments as they're presented, please come forward. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to these UDO amendments? Very good. Anyone want to move on?
Motion to exit the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Second.
Very good. Is there any discussion? We have motion and second then to exit the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See, there we go. That passed unanimously. We're out. I'm going to use the other mouth. There we go. Use them both. Man, that's loud in here.
Yeah.
I love that. Dude, I might just get both of them going and start drumming. So I just called to order, if you didn't hear that, the work session for April 15, 2021. I do not believe we have any announcements or presentations this evening.
We do not.
Okay. Backing up, if you're looking at the agenda, I skipped over on Tuesday evening, April 20th, which is 4/20, which is one of my favorite days of the year, actually my favorite day, is the resolution right-of-way ban, and y'all get your minds out of whatever you're thinking. That's actually my birthday. So, number 3 is staff action items, which is A, city clerk. We have the approval of the minutes. Do we have any discussion on the work session minutes? Any discussion on the regular meeting of March 16th? Or any need to discuss the items on the city council called meeting of March 31st? Very good. Good job, Emmy. Great. Minutes are all good, or probably nobody read. You did great. All right. The next item for discussion under city clerk is the alcohol definition update. I'd like to hear that. I've been trying to define it for a long time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I come before you tonight because we found inadvertently that several years ago, the council adopted regulations concerning the consumption of alcohol with regards to art shops and performing arts facilities. And we defined where we would like those areas or those business types to be if they wanted to do alcohol consumption. When the Unified Development Ordinance was updated, adding the planned unit development, these two businesses were left out of that zoning type. We do feel that based on the conversation that was had when the alcohol ordinance was set, that is not the desire of the council. So before you tonight, we're asking that you move these to a first read to put these two business types back into the PUD as a use.
Sorry, discussion or questions on this item? Great, thank you, Emmy. The next item, city manager, the first item, resolution for the expansion of the Chamblee Doorville CID.
Thank you, Mayor. Additional parcel owners have expressed an interest in joining the Community Improvement District, and the CID is seeking the city's support for a resolution for this expansion. There has been a change to some of the information that was presented in the packet, and the CID director, Malika Rivers, is here to address that.
Awesome. Come on up, Malika. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Good evening, everybody. I didn't realize the chairman of the CID was going to be here as well. So
how about that?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Malika Rivers. I'm the executive director of the Chamblee Doorville CID. And as you know, the CID started in 2019. A couple years later, we are now in a position to actually start expanding our boundaries. So we're very excited about this, as this adds additional property owners to participate in the CID, also grows our tax digest, so that we're able to do more for the community in our public-private partnerships. The map that you have here as an attachment has been modified. The legal process that it takes for us to go through the boundary expansion includes reaching out to property owners, getting consent forms, getting those consent forms certified by the tax commissioner's office, going to both cities of Chamblee and Doraville, having resolutions approved, and then the CID Board of Directors will approve its resolution, and all that information will get into the tax cycle for the 2021 tax digest. At this point, there's been a modification. The parcel on Peachtree Boulevard, although that was a consent form that was provided to us by a legacy property owner in the area who is very excited about joining, the tax commissioner would not allow us to add that parcel because we are not in a contiguous fashion with the rest of the CID boundaries. So I've gone ahead and removed that parcel. The tax commissioner has provided certification for the balance of the parcels, which is 4. The assessed value of those 4 parcels based on the 2020 digest equals about $3 million. And again, that's revenue that the CID will collect and value capture through the commercial property owners and be able to provide services and capital improvements back into the project. So we would appreciate your support in the action of an approved resolution. I will provide John and staff with the corrected attachments so that you can have those on your regular work session at Tuesday's meeting.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Has this been before Doraville?
They are going to be taking this up at their regular session on Wednesday of next week. So you're the first city council to see it, right?
Woohoo!
Oh my God, yeah. That's my team. Any other questions while we got Micah here? I will say congratulations, y'all are doing a great job. I have had some conversations with council about CID and kind of where does it stand, what's going on. I think it's great to have you here. We do get bits and pieces of information, but I think that just the more together, I know we've talked about some of those, keeping everybody up to speed on what's going on. You know, absolutely. I have been, but I think a lot of times, sometimes the council doesn't always know everything. I think they're obviously very supportive of what you have going on. They're not that you not know everything, and you know more than I do. You tell me. I'm just kidding. We're gonna have a little spat up here.
We can certainly add anybody's email address to a monthly progress report that I hand out.
If that would be okay, if you could do that, and then that would kind of help keep that communication. There's a lot of stuff going on. I think a lot of this has really come to fruition or up to head with the announcement of what's happening on the GM site and some of the changes that are going to happen to the assembly CID. And even more opportunity for us to work more closely with that developer, with the CID, between the CIDs, stuff that we've already been working on. It also dawned on me today in some conversations I had that, we've been on a lot of Zoom calls. You and I have been on Zoom calls. Your board has been on Zoom calls. We've been on Zoom calls with GDOT, with various staffs. So I have a lot of information, but I think a lot of times as we're starting to get back to being more in person, it hopefully will become easier for us to all communicate a little bit better. So I just didn't want to pass up this opportunity to mention that. I think everybody here is very supportive of what the CID is doing. We're very excited about it. And as we move forward, hopefully have more opportunity to meet in person, and we can share some more information.
Well, we look forward to Pruitt Healthcare joining the community improvement district as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know about you, but my phone's been blowing up since the announcement of the closing of the property up there with the assembly property. So, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things going on around here.
Good. Well, we're glad to be a part of it, and we were done with the master plan, starting capital improvements, so we're excited for these.
And there's lots of opportunities, as you said, for us to partner. And I know the CID is looking for partnership opportunities with both cities and between the cities, and we've already had some of those conversations. Our councils communicate quite a bit with each other. I communicate with their government quite a bit. So just wonderful things. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for what you're doing for us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight.
All right. Next item, speaking of, kind of in that same vein, is the top end 285 Regional Master Trail Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. In 2019, the Top End Transit Group, which the City of Chamblee has actually worked with this group in the past and contributed funds to study transit across the top end of 285. But in 2019, there was an executive committee decision to issue a request for proposals for the development of actually a master trail plan across the top end of 285. And so, due to some issues with that issuance of the RFP, they actually scaled back over time that project, and now they've come, the top end transit committee has come back with a new proposal from Chamblee Horn to proceed with a phased approach to develop a concept plan for a master trail system that goes throughout the top end of 285, along with the work that's being done by the Department of Transportation. So this is actually a multi-group effort. The CIDs are contributing to this. All the cities are contributing to this effort. The overall cost is $225,000 for the study and the concept reports. And the city of Chamblee is being asked to contribute $15,289 to this effort.
And if I could add to that, again, y'all are aware, I think I've talked to each of the council members individually about this at one point or another. It's been ongoing. The group that John referenced there, with we loosely called ourselves the Top End Mayors, that was an organization that came out of our Peachtree Gateway Partnership that y'all have supported so much in the past. And as John said, we originally started with just looking and reaching out to the cities that are between Smyrna and Tucker. And in the meantime, the CID's got on board, which is huge. We appreciate the CID support in this. And we were talking about running transit along the top end. And as we looked at that, it looked like, well, we need to also look at trails. And one of the things we got a presentation on, gosh, seems like forever ago, but looking at what was done when 400-285 was being conceptualized and designed, the perimeter CIDs looked at working with GDOT to make sure at a minimum that GDOT didn't get in the way with their plans of being able to put a trail through there. And in a best case scenario, there are some opportunities where they may be able to add some infrastructure that help offset some of the costs of putting a trail through there. We heard from them as a committee. And so Brookhaven, thankfully, Mayor Ernst and his staff have stepped up through this entire process, quite frankly, and Mayor Ernst has done a great job of being a spokesman for our group. But this is at the point where another study to show, again, back to that same idea of how do we get trails from that same area across the top end 285, and doing it now as GDOT continues to finish the design of their top end 285 project, and again, at worst, making sure they don't get in the way of what we all may collectively do to put in a trail system. And at best, there are some opportunities, possibly economies of scale, and some infrastructure that GDOT may be able to put in, and some other, again, and obviously, as y'all know, with a plan, there's always grant opportunities. Being the ARC representative for DeKalb County, I've had lots of conversations about this over the last couple of years with folks at ARC, and I can tell you that between the ARC and the ATL and MARTA, there's a lot of excitement that there's a group of us that are led by the cities and supported with the CIDs that are really championing this cause for transit and trails across top end 285. So that's what we're being asked to pony up, 15 grand and some pennies to continue to be part of this group and part of this study. Y'all have any questions? You know where to find me. All right, thank you, John. The next item on the agenda then is an agreement with Chamblee Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. Chamblee Horn is an engineering and consulting firm in the Atlanta area. We would like to add them to our group of engineering firms to use their expertise, especially related to infrastructure matters. They have provided us with an hourly labor rate schedule, which is in the packet, and this agreement would allow for on-call support from Chamblee Horn.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Oops, sorry. What do they do for us now? I say services agreement for continuing professional services.
Well, we don't currently have an agreement with them.
Oh,
So,
just ongoing services that they would do for us. Gotcha.
Very good, thank you. Next item is the Chamblee 401A Plan Resolution and Adoption Agreement.
thank you, Mayor. The city has previously adopted the Georgia Municipal Association Defined Benefits Plan. Recently, they received a favorable determination letter from the IRS related to some changes in the plan. And so we are required to adopt a resolution and adoption agreement, essentially adopting those changes in accordance with what was presented. The changes are basically, I would say, minor. They eliminate, the period, the payroll period section to provide flexibility to employers who modify payroll periods, which is something we did a couple of years ago, where we went from a Friday end of the pay period to an earlier end of the pay period. It eliminates separate vesting sections for matching and non-matching contributions. It specifies the minimum hour requirement if applicable, and then there are some items related to the master plan document that just incorporate some previous amendments.
Any questions? All right, very good. New staff positions and descriptions.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to COVID, staff recognizes that community outreach and education efforts would be improved with dedicated staff. Additionally, the creation of nonprofit and community partnership programs with HOAs, apartment communities, nonprofits, and other neighborhood groups will increase the workload for community engagement. For these reasons, staff is seeking to create the community engagement manager position with a salary range of $62,000 to $96,000. In addition to that, we have the court bailiff's position. Previously, we have the council approved the chief bailiff position, and our intent was to have contract employees as bailiffs. As we got into that and looked into it more, we decided that it would be better to have part-time employees to serve as bailiffs for the court system rather than contract employees. So we're asking to create that position. And those positions would be paid between $20 and $31 an hour.
Is that it? Questions? Is Bull available for the bailiff? Bull?
He already works for us. Just because, I just think he makes a great bailiff.
Night court cut, that was just spectacular.
Love to see him.
He's 100 years old.
I'm glad y'all got it. Usually I'm the only one laughing.
Where's
at
the
my-
poster of Meltor Man?
You can tell who's laughing.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody just laughs at me, but I don't care. I crack myself up. All right, next item and the last one under city manager, rail trail segment 1.
Thank you, Mayor. Utilizing the state contract, the city proposes to enter into an agreement with the group FH Passion to install rail trail segment 1. This was an item that was removed from the streetscape project. In addition to that segment of the rail trail, they will relocate electrical boxes along Peachtree Road and conduct miscellaneous striping along the road as needed. These are some items that we are doing some cleanup, and we're looking to move forward with that. We do have a price of $480,000 to complete this. One question we have, we're not at this time sure if we're going to move forward with the landscaping. It is getting late in the season to do landscaping, so we may pull that out, and that was roughly $80,000 of that, so it could be less than this amount. But at this time, we're asking council to authorize the mayor to sign a service agreement through the state contract, the FH Passion through the state contract.
I'm just glad you said that again. How can you go wrong with a company with passion?
Mr. Walker, could you describe rail trail segment for those who may not be familiar with that?
This would be the segment that would go from the existing rail trail under the bridge and carry it to Peachtree Road. You can see where a lot of the materials were stored between the Georgia Power lot and the Devon ceramics.
Any other questions?
Last question is, does it say in there, I didn't see it, when that was subject to possibly start?
It would be mobilized 30 days after we sign a notice to proceed. So I don't have an exact start date, but they would mobilize quickly.
Approximate's good.
30 days mobilization that you would start to see people on site.
Very good. Other questions?
But, to be clear, this also does include the relocation of the electrical boxes.
Yes,
So
it
the
would
rail
be
trail segment and the relocation of the electrical boxes. Possibly,
and throughout Peachtree Road.
yeah, possibly even eliminating a few.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions? I have a question. Why does Karen have that big monitor with that beautiful picture on it? Nobody else
I just
has
sit
it.
where I'm told.
Nobody else has it. So just keep looking over there. All right, moving on to the development department, which a bunch of you are waiting until we get through this so you can all get out of here. The first one we heard earlier this evening was the Gordon PCI. The council have questions for the applicant and or the staff on this.
I have a question for the applicant.
Thank you, Tom. Come on up, Rod.
Leslie, can you talk a little bit closer? There you go.
There.
Okay, let's see. The screening of the external openings of the parking garage with decorative elements. The picture that you showed us looked like you had screening on one portion of that and not the entire parking deck. Am I right?
Yes, but we're open. When we submitted our application, it was kind of undecided how we were going to approach it, but we're open to screening all sides of the parking deck.
Okay, just want to be sure. That's all I've got.
Anybody else? Questions? Other questions? No? I think it looks awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next item then is the Pruitt Health DCI. Any questions?
I have a question.
All right. Let's go. For the applicant.
Chris is fine. On the materials, from what I gathered, the parking deck is not going to be constructed during phase one. That's a phase 2 project.
That's correct.
But then you went into great detail about saying how the materials are matched. Are you going to take any precaution to make sure that those materials are available so you don't, 4 or 5 years down the road, you don't come up and go, that product was discontinued, so we had to, substitute?
That's a good question. The materials we're using are materials that we say that are readily available, and there's no reason to think, from our perspective, they wouldn't be there 5 years from now.
Excuse me, can you please make sure you speak into the microphone?
Ooh.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
That's it.
Other questions? Again, I think it looks awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it. The next item we have is the JE
Lighthouse DCI. Any other questions? No? No questions? No? I know it's
I have a
awesome.
question. I just want to make Steve come up to the microphone.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
So, I think you mentioned it in the presentation, but I just want to be clear that all the runoff, while you may not have the pervious surface, you're capturing all the water and filtering it, detaining it, and all that good stuff according to the Blue Book, I think is what you referred to it as.
Correct, and as well as the city ordinance, correct.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. I have a question for, not for you, but for the design review board is, what's the big deal over 2 feet? That would be my question, and I might find a couple of them and ask them that, because I'm curious to know. The next item is residential recycling ordinance amendment. Any questions from the council? No? All right, looks good. The next item was the UDO amendment. We had signs, stormwater, and lighting. Brian, anything you brought forward 2 of those?
The only question that I have is something that you just mentioned, was that do we need to actually go ahead and write that in there, that on, when you talk about kelvins, when you talk about 3,000 is white light, and you're talking about different colored lights, do we need to go ahead and put that in there, that it's a different?
Yeah, if you'd like to allow a different color light, the 3,000 Kelvin would accommodate a white light and maybe some yellow lights, but would not accommodate a blue light. It'd have to be increased to 5,000 or 6,000 to accommodate a blue light.
So could we go ahead and make that change if it's okay with everybody?
Yep. Any objection? No.
No objection. That was my question to you, Bruce. Just stole it.
No red lights, whatever.
No red lights. that might be, yeah. Okay, any other thing on those? I do have a couple things on signs. I did bring this forward to y'all. Appreciate you moving it forward to this point. Appreciate staff's efforts. I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what architectural signs are, right? You know, and I've sat through hours and hours of sign ordinance conversations, and you know, it's kind of the thing, kind of like art too. You know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and what do you allow, what don't you allow, what size, what, you know, what's all great. Is what we have out here, I just noticed that as I came in, it says public safety building. Is that considered an architectural sign?
What we would define as a landmark sign, you mean?
I guess. It says public safety in letters across the top of the building.
It could, because the definition is, you know, kind of has some historic references. Really what it does is, you have to replace, you're not getting an extra sign as a result of.
No, that wasn't my question. Is that if somebody else opened up next door and they wanted to put in, you know, Susan's hamburger stands, would they be able to put that same type of lettering above their parapet?
Is it on the canopy?
It says public safety on the canopy.
If it's on the canopy, we specifically took canopy signs off of the definition of roof sign.
Okay, so anybody else could do that same kind of thing. Because I'm just trying to understand what they are.
Yeah, it would be considered a roof sign.
Right.
It would be a landmark sign.
And then my other point is to, you know, limiting those to a certain distance. I don't think that's a good thing. It's the same thing that I've had this conversation, and the reason why I believe, as long as I've been here, we've never done something like other jurisdictions do with special land use permits. You know, if you're going to allow it in a district or in an area or in the city, you should allow everybody the opportunity to have that same sign. Otherwise, make them go through the variance. So I wouldn't want somebody to come in and say, hey, I'm the first one that got it, now half a mile away. I got it, you know, the only other person to get it is half a mile away. If the council would like, I'd like to say that it should be available for, you know, anybody, given the parameters they've discussed about the signs. We don't want anything really gaudy. But I don't think that we should limit folks to a half mile distance between properties. Does anybody have any other?
Well, that was going to be my question as well, because I'm not sure if I want to eliminate the restriction, but I definitely wanted to ask if it was going to be something that could be asked for a variance on, for sure, on that. I'm still unclear on the distance, and I agree with it, but I definitely did want to have it, because there's some things that you just can't ask for. That's like zoning kind of thing.
Here's my point to that, John. You know, in essence, you're picking winners and losers.
I understand.
You are. You're the first come, first served. But my ask of the council, I brought this forward. My ask of the council is that if you're going to put in that distance requirement, then don't move it forward. That's simple for me, because I don't ever want to be in the business of picking winners and losers. If you're going to allow it for parcel A, you should allow it for parcel B. That's my opinion on it. So,
was the half mile radius for just those Chamblee historic signs, or is it for all the signs that fall under this ordinance?
So just all the landmark signs, which are the roof signs.
Roof signs,
okay.
which a lot of folks want to do. I mean, we have an applicant right now that's building a restaurant. They brought it to my attention.
Right.
They came to my attention through an applicant, Grapes and Grains.
Right.
Okay. If Greenwood Ice Cream decides tomorrow they want to do another sign because they think it looks really cool, I think Greenwood Ice Cream should be able to do the same kind of sign. As long as they're tasteful and in the proper size. Again, that's my opinion on it. I brought it forward so that everybody could do it. It came completely out of left field for me that we would ever consider picking winners and losers and allowing some people to do it and others to not on the same street. So, you know.
It just worries me, because I understand the type of sign that we're talking about and everything, but we are talking about lights, we are talking about lettering, etc., and it borders on billboard. as far as I can see, and visual clutter. So maybe we need to rethink it, but.
Yeah, I hate to see y'all do that, but that just might, you know, I mean, I can't be hypocritical about it, and I've always felt the same way about other things. I want to see them be allowed. My guess is that everybody that comes in here and wants to do it, you're all going to grant a variance to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be my guess. And you're going to make people pay an extra amount of money and take an extra period of time to go through the process, only to allow for a variance. You know, I said the same thing when we adopted the 75-foot stream buffer ordinance, and I'm yet to see this council deny somebody's variance request going into that. So we had 25 feet. I said 25 feet's good enough. Keep it at the state 25 feet. We added 75 feet, but we'll always grant variances. Why do you have it on your books if you're always going to grant a variance for it? You know, so if Grapes and Grains gets theirs, they're a half mile away. Great, I'd love it for them. But if Greenwood wants to come and put it in, my guess is y'all go, yeah, okay, that looks pretty cool, and Greenwood's been here a long time, let's give them a sign too.
But is what we're talking about a landmark sign or a sign that says Grapes and Grains?
Grapes and Grains is under this definition a landmark sign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's going on the roof. It doesn't look necessarily similar to the Chamblee sign. That's why I've said, Leslie, I'm trying to understand the definition of these things. Okay, and I don't know, I read through all of this very thoroughly. And I think that the definition of how y'all come up with and the size, look, we do this with all of our signs, right? I mean, and it's done all over the world. You know, and I mean, you look at signs that are downtown that have the name of the corporation really big across the top of the building that look like nothing, but if you put that on the side of, you know, your average spot on Peachtree Boulevard, it would look huge, right? Things within perspective size. We went through the same thing, y'all weren't on the council when we approved the Walmart. And we got to shrink down some of the signs, but it's still pretty damn large compared to what it might be given the size, and that's why we put all these things in perspective. So you put it in perspective, the size that it can go and where it can go, but I don't want to say that you can give it to one property owner and no, sorry, you're within that half-mile radius or half-mile distance down the road, you know, unless you're in that distance, we're not going to give it to you. And I think they're attractive. Brian, you said to me, you're like, you know, you think these are kind of cool and that they kind of represent kind of the funkiness that we're trying to get in this area. You know, you can't, you always kind of legislate the lowest common denominator, but you know, we got folks that are coming to us in the pretty damn cool signage packages that paint parking around the corner with a big arrow that looks artistic. That's not allowed in our code. You know, I think that we need to kind of open up some of that stuff and look at, do we want to have some cool, funky, hip kind of signage, or don't we?
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but we've also gone through, and I know that these are not pole signs, but we have gone through the era when we had pole sign after pole sign after pole sign after pole sign, and for some reason we decided we didn't like them because they were visual clutter, they were too high, not really geared to the driving traffic. For whatever reason, we've eliminated that type of signage, and we would like to eliminate.
And I'm not saying we bring that up. What I'm talking about is a pretty simple sign that is, somebody's allowed in a certain type of lettering to go on their roof within a size perspective. You know, not a big. I don't want sign clutter either. I hate signs. I hate the signs that are all over the litter the yards. I don't like them. But somebody needs to have signage, and I think this is something that somebody's brought to us that looks pretty damn cool. You know, and so that's, yes, you have the opportunity to legislate all of these things, and that's what we sit here and do.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. This might not be possible, but is it something that can be done as an administrative variance, and just so that there's a box to check? I'm just asking.
You know, that would be up to your staff. If I were sitting in a staff's position, I wouldn't want that.
No, I wouldn't.
I mean, I only say that because John normally runs all this stuff by us. He normally gives us a call and says, "Hey, this is what this person's wanting to do. What do you think?" And I mean, if it's something that does turn out to be gaudy or clutter or something, I mean, you know, I'm just asking, is there?
So here's my answer to that. One of the things I've learned most from the sign ordinance is you can't. To a certain degree, you can't legislate certain things. When it comes to sign ordinances, you have to be very specific. It's a lot like alcohol ordinances. It deals with your First Amendment right to free speech, right? So to say that then you're going to put that ability within one individual on any staff, and Johnson may not always be in that seat, and we may not always be in these seats right here. You're drafting legislation that's going to, you know, possibly and should live beyond any of us serving in the roles that we have. And sign ordinances deal with First Amendment rights.
And that's why you have to be very careful and very specific about what you say you can and can't do, right? It's oh my God, I've been practically lectured to about this for hours when we adopted the sign ordinance that's pretty much the basis for what we have right now. You know, and this was something that at the time, folks didn't think of. I was with somebody yesterday that said, I hadn't seen him for a long time. They're like, oh my God, Chamblee's looking great. I love that Chamblee sign. I wish it were bigger. Okay, well, no, I think it's probably pretty much the right size. And I wouldn't want everybody to have the exact same thing that said Chamblee, but perspective to the size of the building, if it said their business on it, I think it looked, you know, it looks pretty damn cool, you know, and then I think we have ways in there to say that it can't say something other than the name of the business, or, you know, you can't advertise for something up the road with a big arrow. It has to say the name of the business. So it can't become a billboard. I just think it's a cool way to allow somebody to use a sign that's different than what we allow right now. But I don't want to see you limit it to like every half mile.
It seems like the council has more questions and ready to move forward on this. So what are our options as far as possibly deferring this?
John, I'd like to get this addressed right now, if you don't mind. Because
I'm not ready to make a decision.
Okay, don't vote in favor of it.
Okay.
All right? When it comes before you, don't vote in favor of it.
Okay.
So how high above the building? The Chamblee sign is higher than the roof of the building. In other words, it's up on poles and scaffolding or whatever you want to call that structure. Do we think that's a good idea, or should we not have the sign be sort of attached to the top of the building without having a huge amount of airspace up there?
So we've in the code as it's drafted right now, we've put a limit that it can't be any higher than 15 feet above the roof, in addition to FAA requirements.
And can it be? Can it actually be something in motion?
No, that's an animated sign is still a prohibited sign.
Okay, good.
Okay, now I'm more confused than when we started. So we're saying that the building sign out here that says public safety, that is a canopy sign. So that is not what we're talking about here, right?
No, that would be allowed by the base sign ordinance for any
anybody.
Yes, right.
So if Grapes and Grains or anybody else wanted to put big letters on the top of their awning or their building or whatever, that is not what we're talking about here.
On the awning or canopy, not on the roof. The roof is the big differentiator here, because roof signs are prohibited.
Okay.
So that begs the question: what's the difference? That's what what's the difference? Somebody come in and just put a little canopy out front and put the sign they want on top of it. What's the difference? That's why I started the conversation with the question about that sign. It looks good to me, and I don't think that it would look bad if somebody next door had one, whether it's on a canopy or parapet, or whether it's on the top of or the canopy or top of on the roof.
Should have put the word Chamblee in front of public safety, but
I think you have the power to make that happen. I think or we could put Brian Mock. Brian Mock's public safety facility. Mock's. But that's my point. Thank you, Brian. You exactly helped me make my point. That's an allowable sign. But because somebody wants to put it on a different type of building, 4 feet higher, or 8 feet higher, or 10 feet higher, then we're not going to allow that. And I think they're cool and hip. And I don't think that it's right to say that parcel A can have it and parcel B can't because they're right next door to each other. So I would like to ask the council to say, would you remove that stipulation of 1/2 mile?
Seems to me, though, by the same token, let's look at the piece of the signage that Pruitt wants to put on their building as opposed to on a canopy or on top. They've got what they consider to be it's artistic, a piece of art if you want it. It certainly is their logo, but if they put it on top of their building, they could do it. But if they're putting it on the side of their building, they're having to ask for a variance.
No, not true. Not true. Would you address that, please?
Sure. So the landmark sign, we have said that it can replace one allowable sign, not that it gives them additional signage.
And the one that Pruitt has that I saw that looks what I'll define as architectural, not knowing this, was on a canopy. Right?
That's a cafe thing.
No, it says Pruitt Health on a canopy. It's on a canopy.
It's on the street.
but it's on a canopy, and it's larger than the one that Grapes and Graves wants, and probably higher. You know, that's the point I'm trying to make, is you're going to allow one, but you're not going to allow the other because it happens to be on the roof.
That's all we're talking about, is it's on a roof, as opposed to being on a canopy. It doesn't make sense to me.
Is the size of the roof sign, is there a percentage, like per facade of the building, that can only be percentage of facade?
Right now, as written, it's just a straight 150 square foot max.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think that it should probably have some form of a percentage allowable of the building. I mean, look, you put it on, you know, a renovated house, and 150 square feet is going to look like, you know, Beetlejuice land. You know, Beetlejuice, you know, the big arrow,
But
right?
Beetlejuice is cool.
And Beetlejuice is cool, no doubt about it, you know. Sandworms, though, man, stay away from the sandworms. But then, but you put that on top of, you know, a Pruitt Healthcare building, it's going to look like nothing. So I think that there should be some scalability to it, but not a difference, not saying it has to be within certain distance.
I think scalability would be. I think what we're all sort of trying to do, at least what I'm trying to do, is visualize what could go wrong. You know, what could go wrong with this? I mean, I agree. I like the rooftop signs. I agree. I agree that you know, relaxing some of what we allow is a good thing. I'm just trying to visualize what could possibly go wrong. I definitely think scalability is something that probably ought to be addressed. And no, nobody can say what, you know, what you consider to be artistic, I don't. What you consider to be tasteful, I don't, and vice versa. So we have no jurisdiction there. So, okay.
So maybe if we could make some amendments to it to show the, some form of scale that's consistent with what we currently have in our sign ordinance, and no limit on, you know, which parcel, no distance limit on them.
For clarification, do you want to keep them on storefront streets or just eliminate that entirely?
Well, that was my next question too.
Yeah.
I think that's a discussion point too. I mean,
I think they should be allowed on surface streets, but you know, I wasn't going to die on that hill. You know, God, no, it was much harder than I thought it was going to be.
Honestly, I do too. I mean, that's what I was thinking. There's other ventures going in other places that are not storefront streets.
I didn't understand the storefront street part either.
As I said to the mayor the other day, I think they're cool. I think I mean, I understand. That's why I said, could it be an administrative variance? Because, and I know nobody wants to take that on, and I understand that fully. But we all, as Leslie said, we all think about what could go wrong, and you know. You certainly don't want to end up with something that's a mistake for 40 years. But at the same token, I mean, I do agree that what one property owner is allowed, that the others should be allowed as well. And again, I think it's pretty cool. So scalability, yes. I would ask that we look at every business and not just storefront streets, but that's just my opinion.
Is there any other agreement with that?
Well, yeah, but then I'm devil's advocate here. How would that impinge on our residents? How does that also, by the way, impinge on our, like what I see out my window, my living room window, or what's in my other windows? As well, how does that affect our, we're trying to limit the light that emanates into the sky as well.
Were we talking about lit signs? I mean, Chamblee sign is lit, right?
Yeah,
so, but you're talking about a sign that would be allowable on a parapet.
Yeah.
Or not a parapet, on an awning. So it's a sign that somebody could just put. What I would do is I would just go put in a faux awning and stick my sign on top of it, and it'd be done. So it's already allowable.
Is there anything on top of the lettering that's lit on the Chamblee sign that does not allow the light to project skyward?
The illumination may be within the cabinet.
Yeah.
But signs are exempt from the outdoor lighting ordinance anyway, so there's no requirement for them to shield to the.
So could we get some information on how the scalability would relate to the Chamblee sign, so at least we have a point of reference to know if that's, I mean, again, that would be information that represents 1 inch of sign for 1 foot of street frontage, or whatever that is. I don't know how you're going to calculate these scalability, but we could look at it, and then there's also how do you calculate that on the Chamblee Tucker side, or you should calculate it from the Peachtree Boulevard side. So that's 2 separate sides. If I get it cumulative, those would be the questions that I would ask. If scalability is going to be a function of that.
So let me ask you this: measuring that, and I'm not sure scalability is the right word, but to the scale of the size of the building. Do we currently do that with other signs?
We do, and it's based on frontage of the building.
So this would be no different than that.
That's
We've
exactly
already
what
viewed
we
this, and we're not reinventing the wheel. It's not that damn hard.
Well,
all right, they're already allowed on an awning. We're just asking them to be able to go up on the roof and have it be in a similar scaled size to the other parts of our sign ordinance.
So,
All right, so if we could put that in there, I think we may have a winner.
I have a feeling this Chamblee sign is different than the scale of what's allowed on the side of the building.
Well, that's not what we're saying, Sean. We're saying that there is a mechanism that our staff can look at to duplicate, to say, well, this is what we would recommend. Staff, and you've asked them to do so, and I believe they will give you information about what the scale is of that sign to the size of the building, and come up with something that sounds reasonable compared to the other ways that we measure signs in the city. Right? And no, and allowable, anywhere, as long as the scale is, something that the council feels they can live with. Right? Okay. Any other discussion on this? All right, nothing in the police department. They didn't want any more cars or guns, I guess they got this. So, you know what? I don't expect to see much else on the police department for a long time.
That's it.
They got this.
Mayor Clarkson, I apologize. Before we move forward, we have 3 items.
They will all move to first read.
All 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Parks and Recreation, we have facilities use agreement with the UFA Metro Atlanta LLC.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. The Parks and Recreation Department is seeking approval of the facility use agreement with UFA Metro Atlanta. As many of you know, we've had a 3.5-year relationship with UFA, formerly Brookhaven FC and Goldline FC. And we'd like to continue to build upon that relationship that we have with that group. This new agreement would be for a term of 8 years, and it would include the installation of Musco LED lights on the Dresden Park soccer field, and that is the enclosed soccer field. The lights will be estimated to cost UFA in the amount of $156,000, and these lights would come with a 25-year warranty, and they would be considered a contribution to the city. Additionally, UFA would continue to pay an annual field use fee that would increase by 10% each year per park over the course of this agreement.
Very good. Is there any discussion on this item? Questions?
I had a couple of questions on this. So, if I remember correctly, the field use fee was $5,000 a week. Is that right?
No, sir. It's $5,000 a year per field. So, presently, they're paying $5,000 for Dresden and $5,000 for Keswick per year. So, $10,000 a year is what we're making off of them in 2021. That will go up by 10% each year after this year.
Yeah, sorry about that. I misspoke. I meant to say $5,000 a year. I don't know when I said $5,000 a week. So that was my first question: is $5,000 a week? Does that actually pay for the use of the upkeep of the field?
$5,000 per
$5,000
year.
a year. Sorry, I don't know why I keep thinking.
It does not pay for the upkeep of the field. The Keswick field in particular is also shared with I-9, Go Kickball, and other organizations that use it for their programming needs as well. We collect rental fees from them. We do not have contracts with those folks. It's considered a rental. So the 5,000, I mean, the combination of all of those groups together does not pay for the upkeep of those fields.
Should we not be getting an amount that is equal to the upkeep of the field if they're the only ones using it? I mean, if these groups are the ones using it? I'm just asking, I don't know.
If council would like us to go that route, we could definitely look at that and what that would cost them. We may lose some of those folks to other places, to other cities and other locations. You know, we look at it, they're providing a service to the citizens and the children of our community, and some of these are programs that we used to run internally, especially soccer, where we were running the program anyway and not collecting enough fees to pay for the upkeep when we ran it. So you know, now we're looking at someone else running it, which frees our staff up to do other things. But definitely, I agree with you. That's part of the reason why we're looking at adding a 10% increase per year. We're also going down the path of basically a $20,000 contribution per year to ensure that that money comes back into the soccer program itself, whether it be in equipment or soccer goals or lights or whatever other bleachers.
Are they still providing a discount to the lower income?
They have a scholarship program that they do where the children can participate in that and basically play for free. I think the only cost is the soccer uniform expense. For a rec league, I think that's $30 is what that is. I can tell you that UFA did, during COVID, ran their soccer program for free. Their rec soccer program was 100% free. Not a single kid had to pay during COVID. And then they've started their fees back for this spring season.
Okay. So only one more question and I'm done. So on the term of the contract for 8 years, do we feel comfortable that, I mean, do we have an out if we decide that we want to upgrade Dresden Park and not do this anymore? Is there an exit agreement on that?
So one thing we asked them to do is to ensure with Musco that these lights can be moved. So let's say next year the city all of a sudden has enough money to redo Dresden Park, we can move the existing lights. The only expense to the city would be the cost of the electrical wiring. So they could be reused and repurposed again later on. But it is important to get the lights. One of the things I know John and I spoke about this was the question was, what could they just donate the $20,000 a year, the contribution per year, and not get the lights? Well, that's kind of not the purpose of wanting to enter into this agreement. They really need the lights so we can play at night. And currently, they're having to move their entire program to Keswick Park when daylight savings time happens, and it's causing overuse of the field, and the field no longer has hardly any grass on it because we have too many teams playing out there and too many people playing out there. So if we could put some lights at Dresden, or we can keep those teams at Dresden and keep the Keswick people at Keswick, hopefully we can salvage our grass and our field conditions.
So was the 8-year term, that was what the time frame it took to pay off for them to have the lights?
Yeah, the $156,000 or roughly $160,000 was at $20,000 a year would be 8 years.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else on this? I apologize, y'all. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my phone off. Apparently, I put it on a new mode where my family can get through regardless of whether I turn it off or not. And I don't know how to find you wherever. You know, I mean, I tell you, no good deed goes unpunished. I just turn it off again, take everybody out of the favorites, and but they know I'm trying to work.
Can't escape it.
I'm gonna text you.
Again, I apologize.
Yeah, right.
I'm like,
see how you rate.
I mean, I'm like, my phone's off, but it keeps keeps beeping. I'm like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, that's right. I put whatever that.
He doesn't love us enough.
What's that?
Brian said that he wanted to text you to see if he rated to be.
Oh yeah, no, you.
I said I don't think
nobody in this room will. You can text me all you want. It's not going to be. That would be my wife and my kids and my mother, right? Because I guess I figured they should be able to get through to me even though I have my phone turned off, and then I'll forgot where I am. Hey, how's it going, Christy? So, what are you doing here?
It's up on the screen.
Are you under F for finance? F for finance, my favorite part of the meeting. Then we can talk about the 2020 Q4 budget amendments.
Yeah, so these are the end of year process for 2020. We're trying to close out the year and begin the process of the annual audit. In order to comply with our financial policies, we found a few things that we need to address. The first of which is an additional cost. The transfer to the URA fund is overstated. Essentially, how this works is back in 2019 when we issued the URA 2019 bond, the best practice would have been to start doing a monthly transfer of the debt service payment into the sinking fund. That did not happen in 2019, so in 2020 we essentially paid 3 debt service payments, and so that line is overstated and we need to adjust that line item. I think the total is $713,380. So that's the biggest one right there. That should bring our schedule for that debt service payment up to current. We shouldn't run into that issue again. We'll do the same thing with the 2021 bond. Once we get that schedule tomorrow, we'll get it from Region Sync tomorrow, so we'll do another one of these amendments for 2021 so that we don't run into that issue next year when that debt service payment is due. A few others, the attorney fees line in Department 11, which is the mayor and council's budget. Ran over about $44,000. That was mostly due to alcohol-related legal expenses. We had.
Well, I was waiting for the legal expenses. It's mostly related to alcohol, and then she paused. She did. I swear.
To clarify, legal expenses related to alcohol licensing.
Thank you.
We also saw some increases to our incinerator and landfill charges in our solid waste budget. This is mostly due to the fact that we had a pandemic and people were at home consuming more garbage. And then
there was a lot of garbage to be consumed.
Yes.
Let me tell you, I watched it all on TV.
Back when we cut the budget in 2020, we estimated a pretty big hit to the hotel motel fund as well. That fund ended up recovering a little bit from a revenue standpoint, and so the payment to Discover DeKalb has to adjust as well. So that is in the total amount of $136,609. So they actually kind of recovered a little bit better than we anticipated. The last thing on this list is a transfer to the solid waste fund. When the 2020 budget was created, a lease payment for sanitation trucks was missed out, and so we need to adjust for that one as well. So the total impact to the general fund is $847,658. Solid waste is $38,882, and hotel motel has a net increase of $136,609.
Very good. Anything else? Any questions? Cool. Thank you. So you got another one, and then we got Q1 budget amendments.
Yep. So Q1 budget amendments, these are to address a couple items that were requested from council last month during the March meeting. The first of which is the nonprofit grant program or nonprofit partnership program in the amount of $150,000. That will come out of council expenses, so we're adjusting for that. As well as the LPR, the license plate reader scanner software. Not entirely sure what it is. In the amount of $55,000 for the request of council. Another item of note is the replacement of 3 patrol vehicles. The police department has totaled 3 vehicles. We've received about $129,000 in reimbursement from DERMA, but we still need to basically foot about $32,000 of that cost since it doesn't cover the full amount. And then lastly, we have a grant program from I believe, what's the organization that you received the grant from?
Foodwell Alliance.
Foodwell Alliance, in the amount of $1,500. So we've adjusted the expenses to account for that as well. We closed on our 2021 URA bond on Tuesday, And part of that bond agreement is that the bond would reimburse the city for all costs that have already been accrued towards design services for the new city hall project. So that bond, when it closed, it transferred $331,676 to the city's general fund. So we're now accounting for that revenue source as well as an unbudgeted revenue. So all of these expenditures as well as the revenue result in an impact to the anticipated use of fund balance at $35,323.
Cool.
That's all I got.
Questions? No?
Thank you.
No? All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, Public Works, nothing going on there, or a lot going on there, just nothing on the agenda this evening. Economic Development, Public Safety Building mural selection. Do we all have the brushes and the paint? We going out there right now? Or?
Yes, this is definitely your job to make this happen tonight. So
Okay, let's go. Let's go. I'm ready.
So as you know, we're in this lovely building, and as part of the construction for the building, you have agreed to have a mural put on the outside on the stairway, just outside facing the park. So in January of this year, the Chamblee Public Art Commission released a request for qualifications to solicit responses for qualified artists. We had 26 artists respond to the request for qualifications. And after much deliberation, the Public Art Commission selected 4 artists to move forward into the finalist phase. Those artists were Brandon Sadler, Krista Jones, NSCB Studio, and Lauren Stumberg. Each of these 4 artists have created unique proposals for the mural, which are shown. John's going to probably flip through those. So that's Brandon Sadler's. I do want to point out on this one, somebody made a mention that they thought the weird block at the bottom was strange. It's a mirror, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
So that what the Chamblee looks like, it looks like anybody who's looking at it. So I thought that was important to point out since it wasn't clear. Krista Jones, this beautiful piece. NSCB Studios, and Lauren Stumberg. So, we also conducted a survey to take a look at these. We had a lot of feedback. There was over 160 responses, which was great. The 2 forefront folks were Brandon Sadler's and NSCB Studios. And like I said, lots of feedback for all of them. So, your mission, should you choose to accept it this evening, is to select one of these to go on the outside of the building.
Very good.
And this has a little bit of room for wiggle room with some feedback for this from.
Yes, we did make mention that this doesn't necessarily have to be the final design, and that we would work with artists to make that happen.
And I will mention as well that the Arts Commission did compensate all 4 of these individuals for their designs. So we do have the opportunity to use these in other places around the city. So we do have a wall that has been committed for a mural at St. Vincent de Paul. And if we wanted to do so, we could elect to actually utilize 2 of these.
And so we're selecting tonight?
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday, but I mean, let's have a discussion about it, unless you would.
I think it's a fantastic idea to use the first one on the side of the St. Vincent de Paul building with changes that have been suggested by the highway community, and I think that's the only changes that have been suggested. Yeah, I think that that's an appropriate mural for that building. I just think it's too busy for the Public Works building. Public Safety building. And I don't think it really speaks to public safety. So I'm absolutely in favor of using that on the St. Vincent de Paul building.
I'll stop you there, because let's say before we get too carried away and go back to you. I mean, I would agree with that. Is there some agreement with everyone on that one from
Yes.
Brandon going on? And thank you, Brian, for pointing out. You had mentioned it to us about the font. I didn't even know that in a particular culture a font could be offensive. So it's always good to know those things. And so I think that's some of the discussion about changing. But I would agree with that, and I see if there's anybody else that has a different opinion on that.
What is the scale supposed to be on? Because we're talking about 2 different size walls, I think, would they both? Because I would be concerned about it if the plan is painting was to go on, off my train of thought with the,
St. Vincent de Paul.
St. Vincent de Paul, and it was smaller, and it's kind of at an angle, it'd be kind of lost. And there's a lot of detail in there that I think, could be, I'm not arguing that it switch, but I just wondering how all that small detail would be represented on that.
John, do you know this different, the size of the wall versus what we're looking at here?
I should have looked at that before I came, but I don't. I will say that we,
I could put it in
discussions, we can talk to the artist about making necessary changes, and ultimately, he would look at that.
St. Vincent de Paul, it would have a big staircase,
It would not.
a rail going through it, so that would have to add to the modification of the design.
I think that the scalability.
Yeah.
Oh, there she goes.
That may be the proper use of that word now, finally.
So,
But
I just
we'll be here all
I
night.
don't think it was.
That would be some stuff that would, because I don't even know, I forgot about the St. Vincent de Paul. Are they gonna pay for it, the larger mural, or is that
No,
something?
that was us.
I believe we would need to contribute some funds to offset, because this would be a bigger mural than what they were originally.
I think their what they intended to pay was about $3,000.
It
So,
was much less.
yeah,
Boy,
not
yeah.
bad, not bad.
So I just got some detailed questions, that's all. I mean, I'm not trying to switch it.
Well, John, to that point, that's what we're here to do. Let's talk about it.
So,
you have a concern with the cost? Or the
no,
size?
no, I mean, I haven't seen the cost, so I don't know how that would transform, but it's St. Vincent de Paul's wall, not the public safety wall. So
We've allocated $26,000 for the artist for this building.
Right.
And this is coming out of Hotel Motel?
This one was part of the bond that we did
Okay.
for the building.
And then how is that going to be reflected on St. Vincent de Paul? That's a 26,000, which I believe is smaller. This would probably be a much, maybe, I wouldn't say $30,000 mural, and St. Vincent de Paul is going to pay $3. I mean, I don't know. Those are just details that I want to know the answer to. That's all.
I would recommend that we look at the Hotel Motel fund revenue for that.
Yeah. We need to give him at least that much, especially if he makes it bigger.
And I agree. I don't know the size of the wall, but we can get that information.
Let me ask you this, Laura.
Consider
Sorry.
the size of it to be considered as far as, that going there. And it doesn't, I don't want to spend the money if it's, it's just going to get lost in the thing. So I just want some thoughts there.
I'm on Google Earth right now, and I'm sitting there right next to the building, and it's a pretty dang big wall.
It's a
It's a long wall, and I think there's a place you could put it there towards the front side that it would not be lost. People driving towards Buford Highway on Chamblee aren't going to see it. The people that are driving towards our town center are going to see it perfectly. You got a parking lot in front of it. There's not a building to block it.
Right.
And it's a pretty good. It's a pretty I'll go like this and look at it. It's a pretty good sized wall.
Sure.
So I would think that it's comparable to what we're talking about, the size that would have gone on the side of the police building, which again is in the $26,000 range.
How, Laura, let me ask you, if Brandon was first, correct?
He was in the top two, yeah.
Was it very close between the top two, or was it like a blowout and then kind of?
I can't quite remember, but I want to say that it was like a 40-30, if I remember.
Oh, okay.
About that. So I'll have to go back and look at the exact numbers.
It was what? I'm sorry to hear that part.
40-30 split between the top two.
You know that, I mean, having been on the council, on the commission, I should say, boy, Jim does not like it when you use committee or commission or it's commission.
Get it right.
When we were discussing this in the commission, we were very intentional to the artists. We had a recorded meeting with various community leaders from CPACs, from LLA, from LAA, from Los Casinos, and talked about diversity and made that discussion available to the artists. So the only feedback that I would have on NSCB is just we specifically asked for diversity, please don't make them Caucasian hands. Like, make them purple if you have to. But like, we literally were talking about having different people of color come to this building and feel like they're part of the family, and then put Caucasian hands up there. So people may think that that's ridiculous, but it was a specific part that we asked them for, and they didn't seem to catch that. But hey, if people like a bird and a butterfly,
Well, and that, again, back to Karen's point, we talked about making modifications. That's something that
that's the modification that we
talked
said.
about. Okay.
Especially since the citizens seem to like it so much.
And I agree with what you're saying, but here's the thing. None of these hands, you can't say what nationality any of these hands
you
are.
can't.
So, and I agree with what you're saying. I actually like how the coloration is on number 3.
Yeah, I love it.
And I believe that with a little bit of tweaking, because you've got this different shading on the NSCB mural.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about.
That could very easily be achieved. The brown thrasher is our state bird.
Oh, there we are.
Monarch butterfly.
The monarch butterfly, we are a monarch city, and the
That's right.
circle in the city in the circle is the Emerald City.
Oh my goodness. What?
She got her an education.
I got education.
Well, you know, I don't,
The
I
Emerald
really,
City on the hill.
I
I
love
always have to think when I question Leslie, because in the artist realm, but I just really have a concern about the scale of Brandon's being on the St. Vincent de Paul's versus the other one. I think the other one is, that's just me, and then that's the public did decide that the Brandon Sadler was the number 1 choice, so I think that ought to bear some consideration in our thing. I like them both. I just think that's a lot of stuff on the Brandon Sadler to be on the side of a road. It's a 35, 40 mile an hour road. That's
45.
45 mile an hour road.
Same
So
speed limit as Buford Highway.
I understand, but this is going to be not viewed with people walking up. I don't know how many people walk up to St. Vincent de Paul, the side of their building.
A lot more do now than used to.
A lot of people, they go to the food bank over there.
You don't have to listen to me, this is my opinion.
Good.
John, I just say you look so nice this evening. Were those khakis that I noticed you were wearing as you drove by, as you walked by?
What's that?
You wearing khakis?
I am wearing khakis.
You must have had a hot day. I know.
All right, where are we on the public safety mural? We like the one with the monarch butterfly and the bird. Just maybe tweak the hands.
Yeah.
Cool. Can we move forward with that?
Yep.
And we'll vote on Tuesday.
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Next item then we have the Arts Center Business Plan Consultant Recommendation. That's a mouthful.
It is. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, with the move of City Hall moving to the new building, that leaves the current City Hall open for new opportunities. And one of those opportunities that you have wanted us to look at is converting it to an art center. And with that, we really need to look at it through the lens of feasibility. And so we wanted to consider hiring a consultant to do a business plan and look at all of our options. We had 9 consultants that submitted their qualifications for the project.
Staff to take a look at all those that had submitted the RFQs, and we moved forward with 3 for interviews. After interviews, we were really impressed with all 3 of them, but the one that stood out to us was web management. And so we would like to ask you to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with web management for the Art Center business plan for an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Karen's not in favor of that.
Can you give us a synopsis of why you like them?
Absolutely. They had various backgrounds ranging from theater, music, and visual arts, which we thought was really important since we wanted to look at theater but didn't necessarily want everything to hinge on that. So having a background in it is great, but we wanted to make sure that there were other interests as well. They also had local experience, so they've done projects in Roswell and Johns Creek as well as with the ATL Symphony. And one of their biggest things that we were impressed with was their community engagement component. It was an excellent addition to what they had submitted, and we think that that's a huge portion of what we're going to be looking at for this project.
Also, their references were stellar, just to put that in there.
That means something.
It does.
I think
That's why I don't ever put references
fantastic.
out there if I'm going for a job or anything.
It's exciting to be a part of it. Let me tell
All
you,
right,
it's
very
exciting.
good. So is any other questions? No? Cool. Thank you, Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, moving right along, and I've already turned the page, I believe. We've turned the page. Yes. Boards, authorities, committees. Yeah, everybody was pretty much bored. They all left. I told you they'd all leave right after the development department. City attorney, I believe we'll have 3 first reads now, and 1 second read, which would be the amendment of soliciting ordinance. Mayor and council all get big stars. This is the favorite part of the meeting. We'll have 3 minutes for anyone to make the microphone, give us your citizen comments. Please give us your name and address. Remember, you have 3 minutes. Going once, going twice. All right, I would make 1 comment. I would like to thank once again our city council for all the hard work they put in during this pandemic and for making it the ability to be able to work together through that time and have these meetings remotely, and to our staff that came up with the technology and the legalese and everything we needed to be able to conduct those meetings and keep the city moving forward. It's no small feat. And again, I'll say we've got the best team anywhere, and we've proven it once again in this crisis situation. So thank you all very much, and it's very good to be meeting back in person again. Do we have an executive session this evening?
We do not.
Cool. Okay. Here we go. We're out of here.